Backatcha. Here I am. I exist. I am still in my existence mode of existing. I feel like I have not posted anything on Substack. That's not a feeling. That is, I think, that it's just a truth that I have not posted anything on Substack in the month of March. I have been working. I have been doing creative things. Mainly, I've been working on my manuscript, my novel, Everything But the Fiction, the debut rap fiction novel. Now, there are other, I'm going to go into the history of rap fiction even more than I did in my post about Slick Rick, because there are other people who have done rap fiction adjacent things, and I definitely need to make sure I shout them out as part of just the truth of what's going on here and what I'm doing. So there is some more history there, but this is the first like self-titled rap fiction novel. You know, no one's ever done exactly this. There are people who have done like in fiction written form precedents of this, and you know, there are even other people on Substack right now who are doing, I would say, adjacent things to my novel, especially Prince Kudera. His novel, I think, is very similar in certain ways. It's different. It's very different. It's more explicitly in mythology, but and in sci-fi, but it is trying to think about the novel and fiction and hip hop and rap and immersing them together in a similar way. And John Noor also does similar stuff. And like one of the branches of the things he does is like very similar to like a rap fiction type thing. But there are other precedents even to rap fiction beyond just like sort of the collective brain thing that the mind, the hive brain that is making rap fiction into a thing now, with people now on Substack and probably people I don't even know, and probably some people I know who are doing their thing that's rap fiction adjacent. You know, that hive brain, I think, beyond just my peers who are doing it, there are people that have tried, who've done it before and thought about that and constructed around that premise in the past. And I definitely want to highlight the ones I know of, and definitely I would be happy for other people to share in the future with me, other people that they feel like are part of the precedents for sort of like the the commingling of rap and fiction. So yeah, I've been working on my novel a lot and revising some early stories, and really, really heavy editing and doing a lot of like rinse, repeat, read, repeat, read, rinse, repeats, and edits on edits, and you know, and it's been fun. I have the structure. At some point I'm going to get into all of that, but this is one of the, I'm working on the longer, I just finished doing another sort of big revision of one of the longest piece in the entire sort of album book. And it's needed a lot of work on the structure. And I feel like I finally feel good about the structure fundamentally. So I do need to parse it a lot and sharpen a lot of things, but I finally do feel good about the structure. So I'm very happy about that. So I've been doing a lot of work really on the manuscript, and I had it like an end of June firm deadline. I was like stressed maybe 2 months ago that I wouldn't ever make that, but I definitely feel now that I'm going to make that deadline, and I'm going to be done with my first novel. I'm going to be so happy, and I'm so proud of myself. And yeah, so you know, there's basically three different sort of, maybe four kind of, but definitely, you know, I'm just going to do three. There's three sections to this. One is going to be about hope on hopeless on Sundays, and we're going to have Rose reading her poem, and then also I wrote her seven. I wrote them 7 questions, and they wrote me back 7 answers, and I read their answers, and we'll have that, and then I'm react to their answers. Some of their answers I react to. But before that, I'm going to have actually in Now Manuel, I'm going to do 2 of his sort of rap songs. They are rap songs, but they're like more layered if you go to the post because he has all the footnotes, which I think is a clever thing, but does require work. But I just love his voice. I just love it when he be spitting. I just love everything he does. So we're gonna do 2 of his joints. I'm gonna talk about them. I'll probably talk about them separately. Yeah, I'm gonna talk about them separately. But him in general, I'm super excited to have met him. I think he lives in California, and he's been really a dope guy to collaborate with. I love him as a rapper. You know, we're writing a song. We're trying to create we have created a character together that kind of started on Substack, and then we took it off Substack, and we have a bunch of notes about the character. He lives in Cincinnati, and it's a love story, and we're hoping to drop it on Monday. So hopefully, I'll drop that on Monday with him. And I'm really excited about that. Now, I kind of want him just to do it honestly because he's so good at rapping. But we wrote it for 2 people to do, and he's telling me he thinks I should do it. He thinks I have a good voice, but you know, my wife Rose does not think I can rap on beat. So she's gonna be mad at me for admitting that, but it's true. She did think that. So I do. And now Miguel, that's where the insecurity comes from. Is from my wife, who does love me. I will admit she definitely thinks I'm very talented at a lot of things, but there's a couple of things he does not think I'm talented at, and one of them is singing, and the other one is rapping on beat. I think that she just doesn't think I do those 2 things well. But I do tell you, I will say this, I do think she gives me more credit for rapping on beat than singing. She really does not like my singing voice, which, you know, what are you going to do? You can't have every skill. So, so we're going to play 2 of his poems. I'm writing a song with him. I hope to drop it on Monday for the end of Women's History Month. I love the backstory behind it, the themes, the way we approached it. You know, it's very layered because we've kind of been working on it for weeks, and then we're kind of rushing to the end a little bit. We got some days, and we're kind of ahead, but we have been really thinking about it for a while. It's been simmering for a while, and it's just dope it's dope to write with somebody that you respect and really enjoy working with, and I really have enjoyed working with him. And I love his 2 rap songs that we're gonna play and talk about. I'm super excited. So we're gonna do him first, then we're gonna really do a lot of hope because of the 7 questions, Rose reading her poem, and then me just wanting to talk more about their work and what their work has meant to me and what the themes are that I really see in their work beyond this poem, but also into this poem, and then also their answers to the 7 questions. And then I'm going to talk about Kanye's album that dropped, Bully. You know, I said I was the bully of Substack. I almost took that down because of Bully with Ye, but then I just was like, I don't even think realistically enough I really matter, so I don't really have to worry about that. So, I mean, I matter actually, but not in the sense of Substack, my bully of Substack mattering to the extent that like Kanye has the Bully album and he's also saying anti-Semitic stuff, which, you know, I don't really agree with at all. And I despise. And also the KKK thing I despise. And the George Floyd thing I despise. A lot to despise there with Kanye. Also the women hate, definitely don't want to forget that. And I'm going to talk about the album, though. You know, my business partner was like, yo, I'm off. Yeah, I don't even really I'm just like, stay over there. You do your thing over there. I don't want to be over there with it. And I felt him on that. I'm like, I get that. And, you know, for me, he does mirror society in a way at its worst. in a way that I think in America he mirrors in a way that I do think is fascinating to me. And yeah, I think in my universe of my story, he is a figure that I think is proving my point in real life and also in my story. So I can't ignore it, and I understand why other people would ignore it. But for me, I can't ignore it because it is research. And if you read Beef, it's in there, and that doesn't change. It does exist as a thing. So then it evolves and it grows. And rap fiction, I think, is not gonna exclude Kanye. So yeah, I'm gonna talk about Bully, what I think, honestly. And that'll be the last thing. I was gonna talk about a movie, I'll talk a little bit about the TV series I watched with Rose, Adolescence. Yeah, I'll talk about that a little bit. But yeah, here we are, back at you. I Exist, episode 4, Poets in the Night. Probably not gonna get that unless you read Kierkegaard. So yeah, so before we get into just Now Miguel's his two poems are songs that I would say most impressed by. I'll admit I'm most impressed by these. These are top 2 for me of what he's released so far. I really love all of his stuff, but these are the ones that after really listening to all of them that I thought were top 2 for what I heard on Substack. And I think I heard everything he has on Substack so far. But just to talk about him in general, I think some of the things that are cool about him is he's a genre bender. He really he's working with poetry really and rap and spoken word. He kind of is someone you need to read because of the footnotes, which add an element of a whole nother layer to the pieces. But also you could just listen to him like on the radio. And so the fact that he's able to do both genres of being like really someone that demands to be read, but also someone that demands to be heard, and that he's doing both so effectively, I think is really cool. And one thing I love about him. Another thing is I think he's cerebral, like he's very intelligent, and he balances very like academic thinking and, really like deep nerd, academic, smart shit with like emotional stuff. And he can really put MF Doom and Bell Hooks. They work together in his universe in a very comfortable way that makes me like just as like a conversation about masculinity, the way he can do that is, I think, something that is dope. He has a deep archive. He's a bench of knowledge. Like the way he can go into mythology, sci-fi, he can reference history, and even when his lyrics have all of that in there, layered in very subtle ways. And even when you interact with him on Substack, you can just see how deep of a thinker he is. He's such a deep thinker. And, it's just a beautiful thing to see such beautiful black intelligence and genius, really. He also is next level in the vulnerability, because a lot of times as a black man, being vulnerable in your masculinity, you can be in your masculinity bag and be safe and cool there, but also can you be like vulnerable and strong? And, his work really does that. It gives me that feeling. And that's unique. That's something that has to be celebrated. We got to celebrate that. He got a great ear. To me, I love his beats. I think he's a real sonic curator, I would say. I like that. Sonic curator. I could barely say that, but it feels like I wrote that down already and had that ready in the tuck, because I definitely did. Sonic curator. Yeah, his beat, his ear is crazy. he really is a genre like Bender. Like I say, he's like part documentarian, part like someone who's like pulling a bunch of different imaginary things and fantastical things together. And his narrator has a lot of energy. And, he'll tell on himself, he'll tell on his people, but it'll be with love and complexity, and, it'll be a lot of life. There's a lot of life in his work. So everything he do, you got to check out if you're paying attention. And now Miguel is killing it. And I can tell he's still evolving. Like, this is not his peak. He has a lot more of a climb to make. And that's true also of Hopeless and Hope On, which I think is a bit of a tension. When you're climbing as an artist, it's very harsh. You can be very harsh about your work in the past just because you're climbing so quickly and you're elevating and you're just so locked in. And we're just fans. I'm just a fan of the poets, and we're just fans and we love the work, but it's just, we always love the old stuff. And that's the thing about being a fan, you get to enjoy in a way that like the creator kind of has to move on. And, and then, obviously they have to, sometimes like pop singers have to play it over again and get annoyed. But anyways, that's a whole nother tangent. That is what I would kind of just say about him in general, just to highlight him in general and highlight and talk about his work. Definitely check him out on Substack and, everything he does going forward after this. If you support me, support him. I would say that for sure.
Yeah, yo, I get raw for you, just like the war for you. Kick haphazard rhymes, but I ain't stalling you. I took the two-seater, converted the coupe for you. Dropped the top on your melon in a second. More quicker than a hater who wanted a light to lease a seven. But instead they were met with heaven. I guess that's the life of Pablo, stepping Diablo's shoes. See, Prada out of order, the prodigal sons and buns that'll leave you chillin' and audible year for year. They don't be seeing the peers like a ship stuck in the ocean. But I owe this to my peers. I've been writing on the dock for a year. Been writing for like 14 years. Haven't released nothing cause all that fear left me stuck on the dock of the bay with a can of Obey. Consuming these crabs in the barrel to plan my escape. Listen to Dr. Doom as I consume my food. This the Desert Island Chronicles of a watchman guy. Looking for the masked man who had passed hands with time. Yellow faces with blood running. Time is running out. A poor little brew for the masked man. I'm blue like Manhattan.
The poet, the rapper says, kick haphazard rhymes, but I ain't stalling you. So he basically saying here like his rhymes are unique and different and they're structured differently. They're more haphazard than the normal rapper, which also speaks to the sort of the theme of self-doubt. Because I don't find that this narrator's rhymes are haphazard. I do think they're unique. But I do think that it's consistent with the themes for the narrator of this whole song is that there's a certain self-criticalness. So I kick haphazard rhymes, but I ain't stalling you. He's like, he's not holding you up. Even though he's different, he's not holding you up. I took the two-seater, converted the coupes for you. So he's different. He's not delaying you, but he is fly. He does have the two-seater that he can convert to a coupe, but then he just coops like a chicken coops. So he's just basically saying he's doing a double entendre for sure. And he's basically saying I can take limited things and transform them into meaningful things. Yeah, I think that's a powerful message. Drop the top on your melon in a second. So despite being different, he's not stalling you. He can convert and transform things. And the most powerful thing he can transform is the way you think. So drop the top on your melon, also goes back to the coupe. So it's like the coops, chicken coupe, car coupe. Drop the top on your melon, drop the top on your coupe. So he's still playing with that on double entendre for coupe, from coupes. On your melon in a second, your melon being your head. So he's basically saying he can give you strong sense of epiphany. He can give you a very profound feeling of like, oh, I don't see things the same anymore. More quicker than a hater who hated a light to decent 2-7, but instead they were met with heaven. I think this is a reference, light to decent. I had to look this up. Because I wasn't exactly sure what that meant, light to decent. I mean, I got it was a rating thing, but I think that actually is a reference to a musical commentator, fan something, some dude that people think about a lot. Fandango, or not Fandango, but some white music critic online who does light to decent scores. But instead they were met with heaven. So it's like he's not a 7. He's not light to decent. You can't even judge him on that scale because he can change how you think with unique rhymes that don't stall you but allow you to transform things. And then you can actually find yourself in heaven. So I really like these bars. Been writing for like 14 years. Haven't released nothing because of all that fears. 6. Left me stuck on the dock of the bay with a can of Old Bay. Been writing for like 14 years. Haven't released nothing because of all that fears. Left me stuck on the dock of the bay with a can of Old Bay. Consuming these crabs in a barrel to plan my escape. Listening to Dr. Doom as I consume my food. 7. This is the Desert Island Chronicles of a Watchman Got Him. So this is more straightforward. The poetry here is a little bit more accessible. And you can kind of say that this is the heart of the poem, I felt like, where the poem sort of like sucked you in as a reader. And there's a lot of mystery and, layered thinking that you have to do to capture the nuances of the work. This one, I feel like the artist is doing you a favor by just opening up a little bit emotionally and not weaving it with different complexity. It's more straightforward. Been writing for like 14 years. All right, so this person has established that they take their craft seriously. So if you're dedicated to something for 14 years, you're not doing it for external validation. You're doing it for an internal need to fulfill, to express. And, in art, we do respect that. There's an element of there's always external validation, internal need, and that dichotomy. And I think, a lot of artists, we respect people who've been doing something for a long time. Haven't released nothing because of all that fear. That's a hard pivot. And that's real, the idea of releasing something and fear and what that means. Left me stuck on the dock of the bay with a can of Old Bay. That's just beautiful. Left me on the, because obviously refers to the famous song, The Dock of the Bay, but he makes it more contemporary with a can of Old Bay, consuming these crabs, and he takes the can of Old Bay to lead him into, there's probably a figurative term for this, to the can of Old Bay to the crabs, which is referring to the Old Bay, the type of sauce you use on crabs when you're on the mid-Atlantic area, very popular. But now he's talked about not just crabs that you eat, but crabs that are eaten by a brutal society. He's trying to plant in a barrel. He's trying to plan his escape, listening to Dr. Doom as I consume my food. This is the Desert Island Chronicles of a Watchman Got Him. It's a lot of cool internal rhymes there. MF Doom or Dr. Doom. There's an MF Doom, and I know the poet's a fan of MF Doom. I really got to listen to more MF Doom, man. I really only know like 1 or 2 songs, but he died early, which is definitely feeding the mystery thing about him. But yeah, I need to listen to more MF Doom. This is the Desert Island Chronicles of a Watchman Got Him. I think it's very straightforward. This is an isolated person giving you the chronicles of how, as a watchman, or as a watchman has him, that he's protected by some larger spiritual force. Or maybe the watchman is something that has him trapped. That part I'm not really sure about exactly. And a lot of times you're not supposed to be 100% sure in art. There's supposed to be some space open so you can put yourself in there. This is the Desert Island Chronicles of a Watchman Got Him, looking for the masked man who had passed hands with time. Yellow faces with blood running 8. Time is running out. I pour a little brew for the masked man. I'm blue like Manhattan. So this is laced with like other Watchmen references because Manhattan, I think, is the character in Watchmen, and this is really very figurative. So I would say this is like maybe the most figurative section of the song. Looking for the masked man who had past hands with time. So he's looking for somebody who is masked, who had a fight with time. It's like wrestling. That's like a wrestling with an angel, man, trying to have a fight with time. You're going to probably lose, but, you know, when you win, you the king. Yellow faces with blood running 8. I don't know if the number is 8. I think that's referencing something. I don't know. Maybe I have to look at it. Maybe that's I think those numbers actually may be that I'm saying I shouldn't have been saying. I think they may be footnotes, the 8th footnote. And I just think this because there's a lot of layers. So if you go back and want to read this poem and you hit the footnotes, there's a lot of layers that he gives you around the meanings of the lines, which I think is worth it for his work because it's so layered. Time is running out. I pour, P-O-R-R. So it's like he's using, that is a term for that, but yeah, he's doing something. I like to do this to spell a word the other way that another word means so that you kind of get 2 different meanings through the incorrect spelling. So I pour a little brew for the masked man. I'm blue like Manhattan. I like that internal rhyme. I like that rhyme scheme. It's complex. He searches for very complex rhyme schemes, and he wants to find unique vowels to rhyme in unique places. It's almost like he writes like every bar is like biblical, and you know it's got to be tough to write like that, but it's profound when you can get it off. And and I think he definitely does his thing in this one.
The stars seem impossibly remote from human experience, and yet we're related in the most intimate way. The very matter that makes us up was generated long ago in red giant stars.
Word to Carl Sagan, everybody is a star. I'm just a Bronx boy who be studying the bars. Like Neil deGrasse Tyson, I am Caribbean. I pray the black fates follow him across this odyssey, a journey to be one with who you are. They heard mathematics got him in the space across. It's Catherine, Dorothy, you marry hidden figures. Say her name, time to amass them figures. Asset, no need to hide them figures. My girl, you's a queen, MVP of the team. In Spanish, using disorder was seen in your jeans. Not only talk about the fit, but how the sun hits different. Use a healer like Henrietta, relax. You got it, you baddies, at least secure the bag. Forget the mother haters who be trying to block your blessings. You're the stuff for stars, never second guess it.
I had a student come up to me at Michigan State University, and this was a young black woman many years ago, and say, you know, I always loved science fiction. I've always wanted to write it. But I didn't think we did that. And she was afraid that if she got into it, there would be closed doors. And life is short.
This odyssey, a journey to be one with who you are, may her mathematics guide him in the space across the stars. That's Catherine, Dorothy, and Mary, hidden figures. So it's this piece, this song is it kind of does 2 things. It's an intellectual sort of journey around what it is to be a star, and then it transforms into a personal conversation with a particular woman the narrator wants to see as a star in the context of these other stars that the narrators talked about. So this odyssey obviously refers also to the Odyssey, and it makes sense in the context of the piece why they reference the Odyssey, a journey to be one with who you are. So make it very clear that the real journey always is not from war to home. That's a metaphorical conversation, right? Odysseus is making a journey from a war to home, and he's fighting a lot of distractions on his way home, and there's a lot of chaos at his home. But the real journey that metaphor is representing is the journey home to who you are. So the journey from war with yourself to who you are, and accepting that who you are is where you need to be organized in creating peace and structure when possible. Because there's always some chaos at home, because there's always chaos in our existence. But instead of focused on external wars, the journey, the fight, the place we need to be going to is home to create order where we can. And may her mathematics guide them in the space across the stars. You know, we're talking about a journey, the Odyssey. We're talking about that journey being an eternal journey. And then we're also externalizing that internal journey as space travel and math and the stars, and connecting that to 3 famous Black women from the movie Hidden Figures in the book who use math to help guide astronauts to the stars. Those same Black women can also help you guide yourself as a man or a human on your internal journey to home. And then we get my girl, user queen, MVP of the team. In Spanish, user Tereso. I should have looked that up. My girl, user queen, MVP of the team. In Spanish, you a Tereso. It's seen in your genes. Not only talking about the fit, but how the sun hits different. Whew, this is some romantic poetry here. Definitely just straightforward transition from like about historical Black women creating this path and journey for society and for humans. We're transitioning to a personal, intimate relationship between the narrator and a particular girl, because it's my girl, a girl that he feels, assuming the narrator is a guy, he feels some connection to, some, not ownership, but lovingly possessive, possessive in the sense of like a relationship, we are true to one another, that type of possession. My girl, user queen, MVP of the team. So like the family, I presume, is the team here. And the girl is the MVP, which just refers back to like seeing what was once hidden. In Spanish, user Tereso, it's seen in your genes. I love that. It's seen in your genes. Especially because it comes into science. There's a lot of science, Negresi del Tice. There's a part of the mythology of this person is, I can tell, is an interest in math and science. Probably a little bit more than me, but and you can see that in the science, the way he thinks about bars and rhymes and schemes. You see a bit of science, and there's always been that in hip hop, the science of poetry. But it's seen in your genes, brings that feeling and that mythology into like the relationship between the narrator and his girl. Not only talking about the fit, but how the sun hits different. Ooh, I love that. Not only talking about the fit, like that you're in good shape, that you dress well, that your external expression of life is very attractive, but also the way you move the stars and sun. So we're back to like the celestial space. How the sun, it hits different on you because you change the whole vibe of the narrator's life. So it's not just that the external impresses the narrator, it's the way the whole world is shifted by his attraction or connection to who he calls my girl. Use a healer like Henrietta, relax. That's a bar right there. You a healer like Henrietta. Henrietta is a Black woman from Baltimore. There's a book written about her, and she lived a very interesting life, but there's a unique thing about her, I think it's her DNA, that helped open up a lot of scientific discoveries. You should go look her up. There's a book written about her. I think it won a bunch of awards. He also references that with the 4. If you go read the poem "A Star" on Substack in Miguel, you can click the link, and he has a lot of stuff about Henrietta. I think her name is Henrietta Lacks, I think. So he does the relax. Lax. He's playing off her last name. Use a healer like Henrietta. Relax. You got your bad easily. Secure the bag. Forget the mother haters who be trying to block your blessings. You're the stuff of stars, never second guessing it. So he's just saying like, yo, I see you as the instrumental DNA that changes everything. You can get what you need to be comfortable and have that bag. And yeah, you are bad. Like you're good looking, you're attractive. And that's going to create negativity. And you just have to focus and never second guess who you are and what your mission is. And that it's interesting because the you there is interesting. Because you could say from knowing the rapper that just as much as this message is being conveyed from the narrator to his significant lover, it's also a message that you get a sense the significant lover is trying to convey to the rapper. That the rapper should never second guess himself. That the rapper should forget haters. And the rapper should relax and recognize the Henrietta in him. So it's an interesting relationship romance. Whenever the best romance, the conversation to the partner, the conversation to your lover is both an external conversation and a mirror conversation. It's kind of, it can be really good shadow work because that can be very unhealthy and traumatic shadow work if you're not aware and not conscious. But if you're aware that there's a shadow and you're aware that you're projecting because you and the partner are so close, you can kind of see even your communication to that person as also a communication to yourself. And I think with both of us being writers, Rose and I have that at our best, is that we're just having a conversation. So I'm not going to do a whole bunch of talking before we get into the poem by Hope on Sundays, just because there's a lot of stuff with her already because I ask her the 7 questions and I read her answers. I talk about her answers to some degree. So I'm not going to do a whole bunch about her before I go into the poem. But I did read every poem they have on Substack, even the Sandbox stuff. I read all of that stuff. So I feel like I have a very good understanding of the poet at this point, as far as Substack, and the character on Substack. And I've always really, really, really enjoyed this poet's work, even just their character in the notes. When they are active in the notes, I really enjoy their character. I just find their work to just be phenomenal. I've taken a lot of, I was telling Sandy about this. There's people who study literature, meaning they study a lot of people who are already very successful in the context of their success and them lasting a long time. So if you get a master's in literature, you study famous writers, and successful writers, and maybe even less famous writers, but in the context of why they were important. So you study everybody that's basically important. Maybe you're studying people that are not important, but it's usually for some other reason. But mostly you're studying the quality, and you're immersed in quality and the complex ways of comparing and thinking and understanding and dissecting, not necessarily from the craft standpoint, but from an analysis standpoint. So it's almost like, someone who studies biology talking about the body and versus like a doctor talking about how to do a surgery. I think there's going to be something slightly different about how they talk about the body. And, being a writer and like a craftsman and having your training as a craftsman, there's a lot of writers who don't do this. They get this from other ways, or that's just not their approach. But my experience and a lot of the traditional writers now, because they have come up through the MFA programs, which people don't like, even though that's a whole other thing, because the MFA programs, 99% of those people never publish anyway. So it's not like, the main thing the MFA programs give you is that you read a lot of bad writing. It's like you dissect a lot of dead bodies that they're surgeries. You dissect the surgeries of dead bodies constantly. And you learn something from dissecting failures differently than you learn from reading and studying successes. And I say that to say I've read a lot of bad writing. I've written a lot of bad writing. And this poet says that there's bad writing. Her writing isn't really bad. Like, I've actually written lots of bad writing. And I've read tons of bad writing. I've read so much, just writing in general. I've read a lot of writing that wasn't famous people's writing. It was people, I don't even remember their name. It was just people I took classes with. And that was part of the deal for the class, was that I would read their stories, analyze it, and then they would do the same for me. And I always read the other people's stories. And for some reason, there's always been a part of me that has always been interested in an analysis of stories just as much as constructing them. And that analysis meant that I was actually very much a good reader, I think. I think people didn't like me necessarily because I was very critical, but I do think if they were being honest, they knew that like I was actually doing a really good reading of their work, because I would take a lot of time during college and grad school with my workshops analyzing the failures of other people's work. I had a better time doing that than my own at the time, maybe because it was just too much. Now I can kind of do it better to my own work. Probably still not as good as I can do it to other people's work, but I just say that to say this poet is very special, because when you read as much writing as I've read that's not in the canon, you're like, okay, how you really learn to dissect why something that's not already in the canon, how it can stand out and why it stands out. You start to understand and think about the science of that. And this poet has that. This poet is one of the most standout poets / writers I've ever read that was not already in the canon.
The Moon and Other Failures, a Hope on Sundays poem. Long ago, the sun and the moon were married and followed one another in perfect harmony across the skies. However, one morning, the moon, tired, refused to follow, angering the sun, who in full flame struck her with all of his might. The moon, now blinded, could not fight back, so instead, she told the sun that from that day forward, each of their children would be cursed. They will not be gods, she said, nor will they roam the heavens as stars. They will live on earth and see out their days until they are forgotten. They will be human. They will be failures. Go ahead, cunt. Pretend my shoulders aren't soft enough to stay home for. I dare you to sit in that corner over there and watch as I chisel away the cemented burden of stone wings I've carried on my back, tie them to your ankles and send you swimming, quick. I'd get one last lick of Zizek's cock before your taste buds are fish food if I were you. And don't worry, I'll tell every mermaid this side of heaven all about that thing with a tongue you like. Perhaps they'll descale their tails too, make 'em real smooth for a man like you. Would that be good? Soft enough? No, don't be shy. Say it again. What was it? That perhaps if I did more thinking and less worrying about what other people thought, then I mightn't spend every last day of my sad, meaningless life so lonely. My oh my, such big strong words from a big strong boy. I'm sure it took lots of heavy thinking to shit those out. Well, here's a thought, you slimy net loss. And here's another, I say, as I don't say, because mother would say that two wrongs don't make... Yeah, but they do make it even, don't they? And just like mother, I bloody love it when things are even. And usually, around the days that she got paid, or what's his name was round, she'd say, too, that I was a child of God, or gods. But then why did brother in Christ get the luscious locks and hands as soft as love, no bone, all juice? And I, the crack-induced OCD and dodgy interest rate loan shark debts, how must I, child of Sunday, child of moon, once so full of hope, react? Oh, come on, Action Man, don't cry. 'Twas all a joke. Fine. Let me have it then, Action Man. Smooth from ass to brain. What's a little overreaction to a big, strong boy like you? First of his name, king of his corner. Here, I'll spot you. Pump out one big thought. Go on. The sun? Purple rain? Mermaids? Look, my tongue, how about a tale? Have you heard the one about the moon and other failures?
So the first thing I want to highlight is just this image, which was the cover image for the poem. I don't know if it was drawn or if it's just a graphic, but it looks like it was drawn by hand and then made into a graphic image. I love this image. I think the color palette is amazing and it matches the poem perfectly. And one side is a sun, a man on a lion who has a sun for a face, and but appears like a moon for a shield, and they're coming up against and confronting a woman who has a moon for a face, a sun for a shield. They're both piercing each other's shields with their daggers, and the moon is on a blue magical-esque looking animal that doesn't quite look human. So yeah, I think this is a very compelling image. So yeah, this section is like the prose sort of part of the poem, and the poem really exists in 3 sections, and it kind of, to me at least, had 3 beats, and this first beat is very compelling and, profound and mythological, and kind of sets the very large, high up in the air sort of background to the poem later, because the poem later is very personal, it's very intimate, and it very much feels like the narrator talking to either one person or 2 people or 3 people. It kind of varies how you can anticipate who the audience changes, but it's definitely particular people are one particular person. And I think you're not supposed to know exactly who the person is, but there's a variety of guesses or persons could be. So that the number is unclear and who the identity is unclear, but it's maybe 1 to 3 people, and so it's intimate. So the poem itself is intimate, but there is this background grid of like mythology, and it exists underneath this very personal thing that gives it both like the intimate and the universal, in part because of this opening. Because we know that there's this background of this mythology of the sun and the moon and being married and failed marriage and that dooming children and generational curses. So basically this is kind of like, you could even almost argue it's like the Adam and Eve. It's a retelling of Adam and Eve. It's an origin story for gods. This is a very brave and ambitious way to start a poem. Because, like, think about it, you're starting a poem saying that basically you have a mythology, a god of existence, of how an existence came to be, and that existence is connected to divinity, and you're opening your poem that way. So yeah, this is a beautiful narrative opening. There's a harsh first word used at the beginning of the poem, and you can hear Rose use it obviously in the poem. I didn't focus there with the image, not because I had any conflict about using the word. It's just the most part I wanted to focus on first was this. And watch as I chisel away the cemented burden of stone wings I've carried on my back. So it's like it's a little bit of a throwback to actually the other poem by the poet, but the idea of like a person becoming a monument, like a person becoming cold. You can kind of even see that in their answers, like the idea of a person having an exterior that is statuesque, or becomes a statue, or becomes heavy as a statue, or becomes stone. A person becoming stone is used in a cool way here. And because it's stone wings that the person has carried, so they were trying to fly, but the flight was doomed because to fly with stone wings is like it's a burden that I do think it's hard to take flight with stone wings. So the person has chiseled away, gotten rid of those stone wings. They're no longer on the person's back, the narrator, but even more so, they're now tied to the receiver's ankles, and the receiver is going to now be drowned with the same stone wings you imagine they falsely gave to the narrator to prevent the narrator from ever really flying. Those same stone wings are now being used to drown the audience, the person in the audience that this is for. But there's mercy, even if it's a mean mercy. Give you one last lick of Zizek's cock. That's a mean line, but it's also kind of saying, the thing about poetry, good poetry, is that even in a diss, even when you're attacking someone, so much of poetry is a communication between 2 people where there's anger. There there's vulnerability even in that expression. Because if you're saying, I'm going to give you one last lick of Zizek's cock, you're kind of saying, there's this thing I respect about you, which is this intellectualism. So at least I want you to have that as in your demise. Like in your demise, I want you to have the last thing that is admirable about you is that you have some genuine intellectualism. Or maybe that Zizek not supposed to be genuine intellectualism, but in a way, there is an element of it that makes me think there is some respect actually for the intellect of this other person while also dissing it. Before your taste buds are fish food, if I were you, and don't worry, I'll tell every mermaid this side of heaven all about that thing with the tongue you like. Perhaps they'll descale their tails too. I mean, the rhyme is very subtle but profound and beautiful there. The taste buds are fish food. If I were you, that's just a great line. And very personal, but physical, biological, the body, the connection of the body, and also, wanting to give the person this feeling of loss, and you won't of like losing your taste buds, like, or your taste buds becoming fish food, is a very extreme thing. And you got the mermaid stuff, this side of heaven. I don't exactly know what that means, or the tongue you like, or the scale their tails. That is used throughout the poem is the mermaid, and the personal part often refers to coded language, it feels like, between the people. That there's all this coded language that, I don't know if it's real coded language or not, but it gives you the impression that the poem can be read by someone and they get way more from it than the average reader. But the average reader gets a hint of what they're getting from it without the full knowledge. So it has the depth of like both two people talking who've known each other a long time, but also the universality that, you get a sense of it without knowing the particulars. So, this is one section of the poem where it's really about this personal conflict between these two people, where there's a lot of coded messages that are also very clear in their intent. Well, here's a thought, you slimy net loss. And here's another, I say as I don't say, because mother would say that two wrongs don't make, but they do make it even, don't they? And just like mother, I bloody love it when things are even. So for me, this is the heart of the poem because it kind of brings everything together. So I think any piece, there's a part of it where no matter how complex it is, you have to give the reader some way to get access to the meaning of the poem, the fiction, the song, the painting, whatever art you're making. There has to be a place in which you're just giving it to the audience, what they're looking for. And, a code, a little note, a way in, like a little map into the heart of the meanings of the poem. I feel like this section is the clearest version of that in the poem. It both centers the poem, but it also uplifts the emotion of the poem in a way, in some of the structures, because we bring in the mother here, which I do think the familial is very important to this poem, because the first half is obviously these two godparents. And then the second part is like this intimate relationship between the narrator and some audience member that it seems very one-on-one with a lot of coded messages. And then we go into this third thing, which is feels more about the family and identity and feeling cursed, or what your destiny is, or playing with your destiny, or not knowing with your destiny, or losing your destiny, or fearing loss of your destiny. It's sort of like, it's not spirals. It almost, it like bubbles up and becomes a cloud with way more than just, the irrelevance of the previous, of the recipient for the second part becomes very clear. And I think part of the clarity about that person's irrelevance starts here with the mother and two wrongs, and whether you can make something even or not. And the mother not always saying what they want, and then also struggling themselves not to sometimes want to make things even. I also just want to say slimy net lost is a great line, because it wasn't that this person was a waste. This person in the second part, the recipient of the narrator's anger. It wasn't that person was a waste it was the person was a cost. Net loss is you cost me. Like I spent more than I made. You were a slimy net loss. And the slimy part says it's not like you can have a net loss, like, oh, I tried to do this thing, it was a net loss for me. But whatever, I learned during the process. But the slimy part means I couldn't even hold on to the parts to learn from. There's nothing I can hold on to. It's so slimy that within the net loss, it's very difficult for me to hold on to any value. So yeah, I love this section. So then you can say that there's one, the two gods at the beginning. There's two, the sort of intimate letter from the narrator to a recipient that feels like potentially one person. There's the third part, which is the family and this idea of like, who am I in this family? Who am I in this dynamic? Why I being the narrator? Why am I as the narrator so different than the others, but so similar to the others in this dynamic? And the fourth part, which I'm not going to show a screen of, is the action man. And that was the part I understood the least, but I got the basic gist of it. And that, it was either the fourth part is the narrator either challenging themselves or someone very close to them challenging them, and they're having a back and forth. And it's either the person from two has transformed into the action man, so the recipient of the anger in the section has transformed into the action man, and they're going back and forth again about this competition between the two of them, or the action man is the person themselves, or the action man is someone else, and they're having this last fourth conversation about the action man and the narrator and what is the future going to be. Because, it's like the gods set the curse. There's the anger between the narrator and the recipient. There's the family dynamics and why people who are who they are within the family. And then there's the fourth part that feels like it's about, well, what are you going to become? What is the future going to be? But this last line, which is from section 3, this last little thing I'm going to show you, I do love this section. And it's just some of my favorite writing. But then why did brother in Christ get the luscious locks and hands as soft as love, no bone, all juice, and I, the crack-induced OCD and dodgy interest rate, loan shark debts? How must I, child of Sunday, child of moon, once so full of hope, react? I just love that. I think it kind of speaks for itself. Luscious locks. I, the crack-induced OCD and dodgy interest rate. Wow. One so full of hope, react. Oh, I just love this part. I love the poem. Yeah, and the last part is dope too. I think the last line is worth highlighting. It is first of his name, king of his corner. Here, I'll spot you one. Pop out one big thought. Go on. The sun, purple rain, mermaids. Look, my tongue. How about a tale? Have you heard the one about the moon and other failures? So it's kind of bringing the title in very clearly. A lot of the themes of the poem are summarized very subtly, but very profoundly in the end. There's still this relationship between the narrator and whoever this other person is that is so complex. There's so much anger and so much satire, but there is an element of satire. The pump out could be weightlifting. It could be also, sex. But there's an element of satire, king of his corner, where it's like there is some respect there. There's some weird thing where even when you're insulted, because obviously the greatest insult to someone is to be happy, right? Like it's like Nietzsche said, the greatest revenge is gratitude. It's like if I'm happy with what you did, then I really ultimately have the flex. It's like everything you did was really for me, Even if you did something that you thought was to harm me, it really was for me. I'm kind of superior, so you could actually never really harm me. That is like the biggest kind of like Nietzsche flex. I think that's a line from Nietzsche. Gratitude is the greatest revenge because it kind of tells the person, you're beneath me. Nothing you could do could ever be anything to me but something I'm grateful for. Thank you. You taught me something, or I learned something. This is not where the narrator is here. The narrator isn't there. The narrator isn't indifferent. The narrator is as angry as you can be with a recipient, but there's still some slight respect in there. The king of your corner. You're making fun of him, but you're also saying you do have something. You do have this zek. You do have his cock. You do have this world. It's almost like, look at all I'm going to be. I'll leave you this. And is that your failure? What's the one thing in your writing you keep sneaking in, even though you're afraid someone will finally notice it? I guess I'm not afraid of anyone picking up on it, but my new thing is song lyrics, or at least references, especially to songs that are important to me, that I know absolutely no one reading a cutesy flower and ponies poem will have ever heard of, or be like, oh yeah, that's a reference to that one guy's verse from a pirate radio set in like 2005. There isn't much crossover in our audiences, but it's really fun for me to throw them in there. I'm definitely afraid of people thinking I write flower and ponies poetry, though. When your narrator writes about being watched by a postman, an ex, a reader, do they want to be seen or do they want to control their gaze? Do your narrators want to be seen or do they want to choreograph how they're watched? Yeah, I like this question because I think that both control and the idea of being seen or watched are two of the more common themes in my poems. And I'm sure if this were a therapy session and not a podcast, we could really delve into why that is, but I'll keep us focused on the writing for now. And the short answer is yes. The narrator, who definitely isn't me, I think desperately wants to be seen and beyond that heard, accepted, and loved. And if it ever feels otherwise, like they don't want any of those things, and the naivete and frailness and desperation turns to a stoic, I don't care-ness, that's usually me stepping in as the writer, dipping them in a hard outer shell coating, and doing my best to protect them from the outside world. I feel deeply responsible for this person. I know and care for them more than anyone, which means I know that being seen or heard, accepted or loved just isn't on the cards for them anytime soon. So I'm conscious of what they're exposed to and who's allowed in. Do you write like you're bleeding out or like you're in surgery? What's the recovery time look like? It's definitely closer to bleeding out, but I'd say it's a bit of both, if that makes any sense. Writing is hard for me, like it's tough. And this is the part where talking about writing can get a bit too bullshitty, too metaphorical, quite self-indulgent. So I hope I don't lose you all here. And perhaps it's tough because I'm not a very good writer. It's definitely could be that, but I mean emotionally tough. And yeah, I'm sure I could open up about the thesaurus and just start jackhammering away at the keyboard like the rest of you guys joke. But to get to something I'm proud of, something that feels like me, I must first sit in darkness, in solitude for 7 days and 7 nights. Then I'll invite my 8-year-old self over to bleed onto half of the page, then shed some tears on the other. I'll let those congeal and mix and marinate for another 7 days and 7 nights, and then see what comes from it. And importantly, if anyone has already or ever does read any of my poems, I hope that process never comes across. If you're left thinking, wow, this was just a simple stream of consciousness notes app ramble with no fancy words or anything, I could have written that in 10 minutes, then to me, I've done my job. The last thing I'd want anyone to do is read a poem and think or care about the writer's process or how well or terribly it was written. Once those words leave the page and enter your little brain, I'm no longer the writer. You are. So I just want to cut in here on her third answer and interrupt their wonderful answers. I really like this ending where they talk about no longer being the writer and the audience, the reader becoming the writer, their imagination confirming the existence of the artifact as a transaction that is a gift, that is also a feeling, that is also a reality created between two people. So I didn't, I think that's a great answer, and I love that. I love a lot of these answers, but I particularly wanted to stop here because that's one of the things that's interesting that even like super successful writers forget sometimes, which is at the root of the heart of the contract, at the heart of the transaction is, as an artist, I'm trying to empty myself of ego and id and falseness, and even through performance, release myself of performance so that I can receive something that I can give to you that is as close to possible to pure instinct. If you take, religion out of it, which obviously this poet's not religious, according to later answers, if that's not happened already, I can't remember. They've now bled together for me. But that instinct, if you take religion away from it, if you're religious, you could say it's God. But if you're not religious, that instinct of truth, you're trying to fight to get to that and find ways to get to that. And the part of that contract means you get that truth, which means you don't necessarily know everything that is contained within the truth of that instinct, because it's both intellectual but primordial, so that when it's received and someone says this is what it means, you almost can't argue with them. Now, I mean, obviously, if someone says it's like a novel, or let's say it's a poem, and they say, hey, this poem seems like it's about balloons, and it's like, the poem we just heard, that doesn't make sense. I mean, if there's just like obvious things, there's things you can say, all right, the artist made this obvious, this painting is of a flower. What feeling that flower is supposed to give you is open to interpretation. And writing gives you a lot of that that's open for interpretation. At its best, it's like so open for interpretation, lots of it, but also hinting at a meaning. So it's definitely not giving you meaninglessness, because the instinct is itself that aspiration that Faulkner talked about to, that instinct that humans have beyond themselves, that even their voice, when they pass away, that it echoes. And the idea of echoes and all the different stuff people believe and don't believe and whatever. So, but then, you get really successful writers, they'll definitely tell you this is what it means on something that is definitely interpretive. Now, I get it if you say like the character, if you make very clear that the character died, then, if someone says, oh, I didn't get that the character died, and you're like, well, it says it very clearly here, but if it's somewhat ambiguous and you put it in there ambiguously, I don't think you can come back and then say this is exactly what it means, because that's a bit of a betrayal to the reader when they say this is what it means to me, and then it becomes a thing where it's like, is your version superior because you're just superior, and then we're back to superiority, and that's the relationship between the reader and the writer, dominance and superiority and inferiority, and are we in a relationship where I get to surprise you as your reader on what it means? If I get to surprise you, then if it's ambiguous, then you don't get to tell me what it means as a reader. And that humility to put so much of yourself into something, but to still have the humility to say, I don't get to say and own what this means, it's super profound. And something that I think at its best artists do aspire for, even if when we even become successful, we maybe forget that it is really the readers that give it meaning. And this is articulated so well here. Your narrators write about shame like survivors, but also like people who keep going back for more. What does shame give them? Again, shame is very much a big feeling throughout these poems. Wow, you must have really done your research, huh? I'll go back to the 8-year-old thing because they are one of my favorite voices to write. That's a kid who very much just, that's a kid who's very much just happy to be there. There's a joy in the brightness that pours from the page whenever she speaks, despite, from the content at least, seeming to have had a pretty depressing and heavy life. So mixing that and weaving between this kid and someone closer to current day me, who has survived all of that, who still holds a tremendous amount of guilt and feels just as vulnerable and alone, yet is trying and perhaps failing to heal and navigate and carry the responsibility of keeping them both safe. I think that's when you get a feeling similar to that of shame. All right, I'm just gonna make a habit of cutting in now. Even though I'm cutting in on me reading questions for some that I wrote to someone else, I'm reading their answers back to me, and then I'm cutting in on myself after talking back to them, but in reality, I'm talking back to myself. This end about shame is incredibly profound. And yeah, that was one hell of an answer. I mean, that was, the interview is part of the game. I wanted to make sure that Hope on Sundays had an opportunity to contribute that to the game. The interview is part of the game, giving great interview answers. It's part of what every great artist, gives to the art is the interview. Now, obviously, you cannot do interviews at all, and that can speak for itself, but interview is part of it. And even if you don't do something that is a reaction to the fact that it is a thing to do that other people are doing and making into art. And this is definitely an interview answer as art at the highest form. If one person had to carry your poems in their body, silently, privately, forever, who would you choose and why? No cop-out answers. Well, the fact that you've said no cop-out answers makes me really want to give a cop-out answer, but okay, I'll try. Can I give you more than one? Firstly, my grandma. The only reason there are deep-rooted religious themes throughout pretty much all my poems is because I know that's the only way I'd get her to read them. I'm not religious at all. I mean, she'd still hate them because of my foul mouth and all the debauchery, but I like to think that wherever she is, she's reading at least a few lines and smiling. Secondly, Girl Inside's the greatest, most enigmatic, talent-ridden writer of our generation. Yeah, that's my pick. If my poems could be in anybody's, it'd be hers, right next to the Erewhon smoothies and diet cocaine. All right, so for this one, all I have to say is that I went and looked up Girl on the Insides or Girl Insides, because I could tell it was a Substack person, kind of from the name, and I didn't know for sure actually at first, so I actually just Googled it, and maybe I didn't. I don't know if I knew, but I kind of did know at first. I think I did go to Substack to check Substack first, so I thought it could be a Substack person, and I went and it was a Substack person, but they had me blocked. So, Hope on Sundays has like people that they're cool with that I don't think they like me, which is cool. I get what it's about. I can be a particular cup of tea. I just think that Hope on Sundays has a certain context on me because of how we met, and then like the nature of like just how they met me and have seen mostly me. Then I think other people have seen and have either been like, oh, that's just weird trolling and I don't, whatever. Or they're like, oh, this person is mean. And either way, I think, cool. And I get it. I mean, I think to block someone is so interesting because you could just mute them. And I think something so elegant about the block, and it's so emotional and it's so connected. And to see that the person had blocked me, but then they're also we're like very favored. We're like blessed and highly favored by Hope on Sundays. It touched me because I'm like, to some degree, I mean, unless this person just blocks like hundreds of people, which I don't think this person does probably block hundreds of people, there was something about me in particular that earned that block. And, you know, I would just hope that I live up to that block, and I would hope that, you know, everybody involved. I mean, I really now kind of am intrigued by this person's work. I don't know that I said anything to this person. Like, I don't think I did. Maybe it was adjacent. I did something adjacent. You know, I am a wild boy, and, you know, it is, you know, I've been trying to be, just let the Substack people do their thing and just, you know, it's difficult times for someone who is, you know, a little disagreeable, because when you have the people doing what they're doing now, it's kind of like you don't even want to be disagreeable, because it's kind of like you just want to be agreeable and be nice because look what they're doing. They're crazy. So I get it, you know, the block, I don't know what I did to earn it, but it is what it is. I felt kind of touched, you know, because it's like, I think this person probably blocks less than 50 people. So I'm in really the top 50. And I think in that top 50, I'm really in the top 5 of people she, like, when she hit that block, she really meant it. Block. Because I think Hopeless mentioned this person a while ago, and I looked, and this person I think blocked me a long time ago. So, and I just kind of doubled back. I was like, oh yeah, I'm blocked here. And this is cool, but God love the blocked. Just, you know, let's just make sure that God loves the blocked. You write like someone who wants to be known, but only on your own terms. What happens when someone sees past the mask before you're ready? Any answer acceptable besides you kill them? I'm too cool for lots of things, but I'm never too cool to say that I want to be known. Of course I do. My writing would never leave my notepad if I didn't. And the great thing about being a writer is that you aren't confined to only being the writer. You can be a character in the stories you tell as well. And that's the goal, for people to know everything about me, feel what I feel, and live alongside me in our own little world, yet know nothing at all about me, you know? I think the internet makes it very easy to, and even rewards oversharing and giving your all to any and everyone. And for what? Acceptance? An ego tally? I have nothing to hide, but I don't log on here to or anywhere as an extension of myself to invite the entire world into my life. I didn't sign up for that, and it's not the reason I write. I've worked so hard and continue to work on building Hope on Sundays, the character, and I think selfishly or not, that if you just let me conduct the ship over here, then we'll all have a good time. And with that being said, I love you all. Anyone that wants to be best friends or know me on a deeper level, you're more than welcome. But as soon as you do, you lose all the mystique, charm, and allure that comes with Hope on Sunday. And I don't think that's worth it just to know how my day was. If I'd known you your whole life, what would feel obvious in your poems, but instead slips past me now? That I'm a real fucking sweetheart. And this is to everyone. I never get messages saying, hey, I just read your poem. Do you need a hug? It's always, this was hilarious, or I love this. You're a genius. And although I agree, I'm not a robot with a pen in my hand, guys. I'm a sensitive soul that really cares. And I know I just said that you shouldn't know me at all. I'm just saying, if you did, you see my meanness and ice cold heart for what it truly is. All right. So the last thing I said I was going to talk about was the Ye album, Bully. In general, you know, the album is very soulful. It's actually a good album. I think people say it should be mastered better. There's AI or whatever, and he could have just done it. And, you know, some of the bars or whatever, people criticize it. I don't really care about all that. The beats were fire. it was a vibe. It had the thing. I love the video with his son with the magic thing and the wrestlers. That was high art, man. That video is crazy, and the way it mixes with the songs is amazing. You know, it's very soulful to me. It's very honest. It's very transparent. A lot of the songs, honestly, the guy's telling you he's not in good shape, but you know, he projects it as if he's talking to some lover, but just like I was saying, often when you're talking to a lover, you're talking to yourself. In art, you're often just really talking to yourself, no matter how you try to play it or how you try to hide it or what you try to do to avoid that truth. In art, you're often just talking to yourself to the extent that you're ever doing anything else is questionable. But, you know, I think that it doesn't really have the hateful stuff. It does have like the stuff where it's like the mirror relationship, the internal drama, the chaos, the feeling of someone self-destructing, but also sadly aware of it in this profound way that ends up being touching. But it doesn't have like the direct hate, like the KKK, the Nazi stuff, the very hateful stuff. You know, and that's the thing. It makes more clear that he sees the album like, you know, that hateful stuff isn't on Donda. You know, a lot of that stuff, it's controversial stuff on the albums, but it's not like the crazy hate stuff like he does on Twitter or whatever other place he wants to express hate. But he doesn't do it on the album, I think, because he knows kind of like he wants the albums to be timeless in a way that's even sicker, because it says he knows this other stuff around the albums that he does is beneath the albums, and he doesn't want to pollute the albums with that stuff, which just shows he knows the difference, right? And then people try to say he's crazy, and I get what they say when I say it too, like, oh, he's crazy, he's just doing crazy stuff. And I think it's one thing when you mean like crazy loosely, like he's just doing something wildly out of bounds of the norm and what you expect. And when you say like, oh, this person has bipolar or this person is neurodivergent, that element to it. Because to me, the difference I would say is like, to the extent that he's neurodivergent, that's not why he's into Nazism. You know, to the extent that he's neurodivergent, that's not why he's expressing hate. You know, you can be neurodivergent and have a tick and like want to say anything that crosses the human imagination and still not want to make change about it and know, oh, this is wrong, I can't do this, but like I can express it privately. When I'm stressed, I can just in my room, you know, go crazy saying crazy stuff and never say it publicly. And that's just part of my reality of how I'm dealing with the stress of life. But I'm not publicly promoting hate, you know, while also, you know, side protecting my art, my long-term albums from that hate, you know, and wanting it to be separated or whatever he wants. But not that any of this really even matters, right? But the albums, the songs I like most on the album were the Can't Hurry Love. I love that song. The Highs and Lows, that I shouldn't have even tried to sing that little shit, but whatever. Highs and Lows, I love that song. And The Preacher Man. But I really liked all the songs, honestly. There were some lines or sections that were maybe duds, but whatever, man. Just the beats were fire and just the concepts were fire. And the video with his son was like dope. And yeah, I wish Ye didn't spread hate, you know. That's all I can say. He shouldn't spread hate, and he does. And, you know, it's unforgivable. But this is a good album. It would have been better if he just not spread hate and just let the album and the music live. But instead, he couldn't control the mythology. He lost control of the character. So now it's all kind of spoiled in a way. But maybe not. I don't know. It's for the people to decide. Gene Salad dropping on Sunday, March 30th, 2025. The first issue of Gene Salad does drop. Gene Salad, the first issue comes out Sunday, 3/30/25, First episode of Gene Salad comes out, I think, every Sunday for the next, up until Easter. There may be another appearance. I've heard, there's rumors, there may be an appearance of Hopeless on Sundays, on Sunday of Easter. Maybe not. That's not a promise. Don't shoot the promoter, but that is what I'm saying. But the first episode, lock in, March 30th, 2025, the first issue of Gene Salad. The first Hopeless on Hope lit mag with her and other people and her uplifting other people. It comes out this Sunday, 3/30/25. Backatcha.